Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic. Which is what if Naruto travels the world and made his massive harem and became a harem legend, part 3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. It took a week to arrive on Haha Island. He had traveled to Nagi Island first, then traveled down to Oazu Island and left from there to the main island of Sea Country, Haha Island. He learned of a race called the Todoroki Shrine Race, held every 4 years while on Oazu Island. Apparently to avoid bloodshed, many of the local crime bosses in Dagarashi port in Tea Country sponsor a runner to compete in the race. They start at Dagarashi port, then travel north up the coast till they reach a certain fishing village. From there they take a small boat and travel to Nagi Island and retrieve a jewel from the Midoroki Shrine on the island and run to the Todoroki Shrine on Oazu Island. The first to arrive at the shrine wins the race, and the family that sponsored the runner wins control of Dagarashi port for 4 years. He would have loved to have watched it, but unfortunately the next race wasn't until 3 years. While in Sea Country, he decided to see if he could advance his Suiten manipulation and his Hyoten as well, to the point of being able to draw water from the air like the Nadaime Hokage did. It was currently the middle of July, and after 6 months of training with help from his Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he was able to draw enough moisture from the air quick enough to use techniques up to C rank in battle. During his training he heard rumors of a Kaima, a sea monster that attacked ships and inhabited Kika Island. Also, any people that traveled too close to the island disappeared. Deciding to check it out, he salvaged a boat and headed over to the island at first light. When he traveled to the island, he started to sense something. He looked around and realized it was coming from underneath him. He jumped onto the ocean right before something broke through his ship. He caught a brief glimpse of what it looked like before it went back underwater. Whatever it was, it had green scale-like skin, fins and gills. He also thought he saw a young face of a girl. He ran atop the water heading towards the island. When he arrived, he could barely smell a lingering scent of snakes. Orochimaru, he thought. He traveled further into the island following what appeared to be a path that leads to a cave. He traveled inside and came upon a compound. He could smell snakes in here as well and knew this was one of Orochimaru's sick experiments from the various test tubes lying around. He created some shadow clones in each room he traveled through to go through any information he would find useful and destroy everything else, and plant exploding tags to destroy this place once he left. As he traveled further into the compound, he started to hear voices. One sounded like a young girl and the other a man. "Did you kill him?" he heard the man ask. "No. He must be a ninja, 'cause I saw him run across the water to the island here." He heard the voice of the girl say, "We must not let him to interfere. Once I finish my research, I will have my revenge on Orochimaru for abandoning our research." The man said, "Then you will change me back to being normal, right? You promised if I helped you Amachi you'd cure me of what you did to me." The girl said, "Of course Isaribi, you have been most helpful, and once this is over I shall cure you." The man identified as Amachi said with a smile. The girl identified as Isaribi gave a small smile back. When they were finished, Naruto decided to make his presence known and entered the room. It was a cove and there was a small engine-powered boat in a small dock. Amachi and Isaribi were startled when they heard the doors open. "Well, that was certainly interesting. But what I'm really pissed off is the fact that you are lying to the girl. I've read your research on my way down here and there was no mention of a cure. In fact, in your personal notes you stated that there was no cure and that you planned to dissect her once she was no longer useful." Naruto said and started releasing killing intent. Amachi fell down and started sweating from the key killing intent. He felt like his heart was about to explode. Isaribi was feeling it as well, but it wasn't as bad. Her mind was in turmoil at the moment though from what she heard. "No cure. What does he mean, no cure? Amachi promised me he could cure me. And he said Amachi was going to dissect me." She thought. She looked at Amachi, then Naruto, then back to Amachi. Was he telling the truth? Is there really no cure? Have you been lying to me the entire time? She yelled. Naruto let his ki go and let Amachi respond. Why yes you stupid girl. I've been using you this entire time. How does it feel knowing all those innocent people you killed and captured for me in exchange for curing you were pointless? Amachi chuckled. Isaribi looked down, shaking in rage and sadness. She transformed into her Kaima form and shouted at Amachi, I'll kill you. Amachi reached into his coat and pulled out a smoke bomb and tossed it onto the ground. When it cleared, he was in the boat heading out off the cove. Isaribi jumped in the water and followed. Naruto created a few more clones and had them do the same as the others. He jumped onto the water and followed the others and heard the sound of explosions a few seconds later behind him. When Naruto found them, they were already fighting. Amachi had transformed into a Kaima as well and was beating Isaribi. He was about to kill her when Naruto intervened and scooped her out of the way. He placed her onto the local shore. Stay here, Isaribi. Let me finish this, Naruto said, and with that he turned back to Amachi. Amachi shot out a blast of water from his mouth at Naruto. He dodged it and inhaled and thought, Futen. Daitapa, wind release, great breakthrough, and blew a large gust of wind at Amachi. Amachi was too slow to dodge it and got hit. He got up with numerous cuts and went through some hand seals and slammed them on the water. Naruto watched as a giant creature made of water slowly appeared. Amachi started laughing and said, Behold my greatest project. I name it Yumibozu. It is indestructible. As he continued to laugh, Naruto eyed the beast and thought, it's only water being held together by chakra. The only way to destroy it would be to completely evaporate it. Naruto quickly thought, Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique, and sent out a giant fireball followed by a couple hand seals and yelling out Futen. Tatsu no Oshigoto, wind release, great task of the dragon, and a giant tornado appeared. It combined with the fireball, turning the flames white, making it a giant white flaming tornado. It impacted Yumibozu as well as Amachi. The flames were so intense that each was either totally evaporated or turned to ashes. Naruto turned around and headed back to where Isaribi was. Speaking of Isaribi, she was completely dumbfounded. During the battle she had dropped her transformation when she thought that this hot blonde would be killed just like the others, especially when Amachi summoned Yumibozu. But he completely destroyed both of them with only two jutsu. Two jutsu. She saw him coming towards her and she was terrified. Naruto saw the fear in her eyes. He slowly kneeled in front of her and smiled. Hello. My name is Naruto. Yours is Isaribi if I remember correct. Naruto asked. Isaribi nodded. Hi, that is correct. What are you going to do to me? Naruto continued smiling at her and said, well, that is up to you. I might be able to heal you, and after I'm finished you can stay with me while I remain for the remainder of my time in Sea Country, or you can leave any time you feel like it, but I don't think the people will accept you after what you've done, even if you somehow return to normal. Why? Why would you want to help me after everything you know I've done? She asked with tears in hers. Naruto sighed and said, because I know what it's like to be seen as a monster. To be looked down upon and people wishing you were dead. Tell me, Isaribi, have you ever heard of a Jinchuriki? She shook her head. Jinchuriki are people who have a demon sealed inside them. Whether they are created to be used as a weapon or were created to save a village, Jinchuriki are treated the same. They are the outcasts of society. One day the greatest of the Biju, the Kyuubi no Yoko, attacked my home village of Konohagakure no Sato. The Yondaime Hokage knew there was no way for someone even as powerful as him capable of defeating the Kyuubi. The Yondaime was a noble man. He would never ask someone to do something if he was not willing to do it. So with a heavy heart he asked his wife, who was pregnant with their only child, a son, to induce the pregnancy 3 weeks early to use their son as the vessel of Kyuubi. So he arrived at the battle with his son in his arms and started the sealing process. He summoned the Shinigami, as only a god was powerful enough to power the seal to contain Kyuubi. But this came at a cost. You see, in order to do this, the user who summons the Shinigami will have their soul taken by him as payment. When the sealing was over and he was dying with his son in his arms, his closest friends arrived informing him that his wife had died shortly before him due to complications of the birth. Now knowing that his son would grow up without his parents, he made his last wish for the people to see the child who contained the Kyuubi as a hero who helped save Konoha, but his wish was not to be granted. For the first 5 years of his life the boy grew up hated and despised by the villagers and shinobi, not knowing why. They beat him and starved him, believing him to be Kyuubi incarnate, or would hurt him thinking they could hurt Kyuubi. The Sandaime had passed a law prohibiting anyone to speak of the Kyuubi in the boy, but the people found a way by that. Parents would tell their children to stay away from the boy, saying he was evil and a demon. On his 4th birthday the orphanage kicked him out and he lived on the streets for 6 months until the Hokage found him and got him the only apartment that would let him live in the slums. Then on his 5th birthday everything changed. He went out to celebrate with everyone else on the anniversary of Kyuubi's defeat, but the villagers would not allow that. They chased him into an alley where they gave him the worst beating of his life. They cut him with various weapons, each coated in a different poison, then they slammed his head against the wall repeatedly until his skull cracked open. Then finally, as the boy was losing consciousness, he saw a ninja go through some hand seals for a Kaiden jutsu and set him on fire. When he woke up he met Kyuubi and learned why she attacked, and he met his parents as well as the Kyuubi. After he woke up in the hospital he spent a year training at his clan estate in secret, then left the village on his 6th birthday to travel the world and become stronger. He promised to himself that he would return and make the people see that he was not the Kyuubi and become the best Hokage the village would ever see. So he traveled the world meeting friends and lovers, and now here I am. He finished with a smile. Isaribi had no idea what to say or how to react. This young man in front of her just told her of a life that she couldn't even imagine living through. How? If what you said is true, then how did you continue to survive day after day? Why do you continue to survive? She finally asked. He simply smiled and said, I do it for my precious people. I continue to fight and live to protect them. If it wasn't for the few people in Konoha that cared for me, I probably wouldn't have made it. If you are willing to give me a chance, I swear to protect you with my life. He reached out his hand to her and she slowly took it. He helped her up and hugged her. She was startled but relaxed in the embrace. During the next 6 months Isaribi decided to stay with Naruto. He had healed her with his Ranpu, Seisei Sosei, light, regeneration rebirth, technique, and she was so excited she kissed him, getting her first kiss. He had also showed her his life through the Ninpo, Mu Kanran Waza, ninja art, life viewing technique, when he mentioned it and she asked to see it. Naruto found her to be a sweet girl like Haku and Sasama, and their relationship got closer over the months. They traveled to each of the islands making up Sea Country, and when they arrived on Jiro Island they came upon an old compound that they found out was used by Orochimaru. Naruto sent some clones through the place to look around while he did with Isaribi. They came upon a room with a picture that had a young girl and an older version of the girl in the picture. They both had lavender hair and gray eyes. With the picture was a journal along with a necklace that the older woman in the picture was wearing. I think I've seen that girl before, but older, in Konoha before I left, Naruto thought. He read through the journal and learned her name was Mitarashi Anko. She was apparently Orochimaru's apprentice, and when he abandoned Konoha he took her with him, not informing her he wasn't coming back. By the time she found out, she was already labeled a missing nin and was afraid to go back, so she stayed with Orochimaru. It ends with her mentioning that Orochimaru was planning on giving her and 9 others a gift the next day. He picked up the objects and sealed them away to give back to their owner when he returns to Konoha. After a couple more hours his clones found some various low-ranked jutsu and various research ideas Orochimaru had. The most interesting thing they found though were documents showing that old war hawk Danzo was working with Orochimaru after he left Konoha. He quickly sealed everything away and placed exploding tags around the compound and blew it up. One day Naruto and Isaribi decided to go diving around the islands off the east coast of Haha Island, where he found something very interesting. When Naruto returned to the boat and calming down a worried Isaribi for being gone so long, he explained what happened. Isaribi was shocked that one of the legendary contracts was here in Sea Country and that she never found it, but congratulated Naruto with a long makeout session. Naruto and Isaribi were both now 14 years old and it was the end of January and the time came to leave. Naruto convinced Isaribi to travel to Kiri to stay with the others. He summoned a clone to explain to the others what happened and a dragon, and with a kiss she wouldn't be forgetting for a while, he placed her in front of the clone with a backpack carrying scrolls containing everything she owned and watched as they flew off. He boarded a boat at one of Haha Island's ports headed for Tea Country. It was an 8-hour trip, and when he arrived at Port City located at Tea Country's southern tip, he stumbled when he was walking off the ship as he received his clone's memories. Lucky bastard, he thought as he saw his clone making out with each of his girls. He heard Kyuubi laughing at him, which only made him mumble more. During his time in Tea Country, Naruto learned one of the prized techniques of his father, the Rasengan. When he read the directions for the technique, he laughed for a few minutes but complied. He managed to complete it in one day. If his chakra control wasn't as good as it was, he knew it would have taken longer to accomplish. He was awed by its power and was shocked when he learned that the technique wasn't finished and what his father had planned for it. The first step was learning how to burst a water balloon by spinning the water inside in multiple directions at once using only the user's chakra, which emphasizes rotation. This is where his chakra control came in. The second step was for the user to burst a rubber ball, and since rubber is thicker and air is completely different from water, it forces the user to use denser chakra to break it. This step emphasizes power, and he had plenty of power. The last and final step was to combine both step 1 and 2 by spinning chakra inside a balloon without moving the balloon itself, emphasizing stability of the sphere shape. This step took most of the day to complete. By the end of the week he was able to make a Rasengan in each hand in an instant, and he was already thinking of ways to improve the Rasengan as well as add his elemental chakra to it. Naruto had maxed out his weights during the middle of July and applied gravity seals to his body. He had it currently set to 2x normal gravity as well as wearing his weights. When he read the instructions for the Hiraishin no Jutsu, it stated that he should have his gravity seals set to at least 3x normal gravity before he attempts it. It was now September and he was currently playing a piano in the hotel he was staying at. During his travels he picked up many hobbies, but playing the various instruments in the world was one of his favorites. When he finished he heard clapping and he noticed he had gathered an audience. He smiled at them and took requests and played for the rest of the night. When he retired to his bedroom he could have sworn he recognized one of the women in the crowd, and by the look on her face she must have thought he looked familiar as well. As he lay down he started going over everything since he left Konoha. He'd be returning in only a few months now and he was both excited and nervous. He started going over his skills to keep his mind off that for now. He was easily cage level. Kyuubi told him that he was stronger than the Sannin and was on par with the Sandaime in his prime. When she said that he was surprised, the Sandaime was the 5th strongest person to ever come from Konoha. His father Namikaze Minato first, Senju Hashirama second, Uchiha Madara third, Senju Tobirama fourth, Sarutobi Hiruzen fifth, followed by Hatake Sakumo, Jiraiya, Senju Tsunade, Uchiha Itachi, Orochimaru and Hatake Kakashi. The problem with Madara is finding a way to defeat him for good, and so far there was only one way Naruto could think to do that. His ninjutsu was cage level easy. He'd mastered 6 of the 7 main elements and started working on his dark element a month ago. Kyuubi had managed to write down a few jutsu she could remember the Rakudo Sennin used and some helpful hints he mentioned when she talked to him about it. The power of it was just incredible with just the low-level jutsu he was working with. He'd mastered his Hyoten and Mokuden sub-elements and was able to draw enough moisture from the air to use jutsu up to B rank in combat. Recently he had started working on Yoden, lava release, manipulation by combining fire and earth natures. Taijutsu was also cage level. He had mastered his father's style Maucho, bird of prey, his mother's style Hiryu, flying dragon, and Maida Guy's style Goken, which he rarely used as it was similar to his mother's style and he preferred his mother's anyways as it was slightly superior. Genjutsu was high Junin and could dispel any genjutsu he's come upon so far as well as cast all C rank, most B rank, and a small handful of A rank. He was glad he had a photographic memory as that was a big help. Kenjutsu was Kage level. His skill with his Kodachis and Dragon Sword was higher than his Knights of Whirlpool. He was able to improve using his elemental chakra in the Dragon Sword and his skills in the hidden Mitsurugi Ryu style was getting better. He started on his next Fuinjutsu project. He was currently close to finishing his seals that would negate the Sharingan's copying abilities. His speed and strength had been lowered to high Chunin when he added the gravity seals and had his chakra weights max out but was easily Kage level with the seals and weights off. If he dropped his chakra weights to 0 while leaving the seals on it would increase to mid-Junin. He didn't even bother to see what it would be like if he turned off the seals and left his weights maxed as he would never do that. With his 15th birthday coming up he was close to absorbing Kyuubi's 8th tail which would give him chakra reserves of about 17 cages including his own. His chakra control was Kage level as well but he had to constantly train to keep it there for now. When he went down for breakfast he spotted the same woman from last night. He could tell from her stance she's had shinobi training but the marks on her cheeks were what made him realize who this woman was. Arin, he thought. That was where he recognized her. She was the female Chunin on his father's team that left Konoha shortly after his father was sworn in as Hokage. He had seen a picture of her in his father's study and thought she was pretty back then but now she was drop-dead gorgeous. She still had her brunette hair but it was a bit longer now reaching her mid-back and had her brown eyes but the rest of her body developed quite nicely. Her brias had grown to a nice C-cup and her legs were lean and long. Her hips were wide and her SS was amazing and to top it all off her face looked even more angelic with those purple rectangle marks on her cheeks. He approached her and she was watching him. He held out his hand out, she grabbed it. He led her back up to his room where they ordered room service. Who are you? Rin asked while waiting for their food. My name is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Only child and son of Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina, and if I'm correct you would be Rin, the female member of my Otu-san's team when he was a sensei. Naruto said. Rin was shocked that this young man claimed to be her sensei's son. But he does look a lot like him, she thought. Kakashi knows the truth but he doesn't know I know of my heritage. Naruto said. Rin's eyes widened again when he mentioned Kakashi. If you are who you say you are then what are you doing out here? She questioned. Naruto sighed and she saw for a brief second so much pain in his eyes that she wasn't sure was possible. You know of the Kyuubi attack on Konoha almost 15 years ago, correct? She nodded and said, yeah, I returned to Konoha to help with the injured and left before anyone knew I was there. Do you know how the Yondaime really defeated Kyuubi that day? Naruto asked. She nodded then her eyes widened. You're the baby he used that day, aren't you? She asked. She saw him nod and he said, Father convinced mother to induce the pregnancy 3 weeks early. He knew the only way to defeat Kyuubi was to seal her and only a newborn baby would be able to withstand the power Kyuubi possessed. Also Otu-san was an honorable man and would not ask any other family if he couldn't do the same to his. She nodded at that and thought, that's true. Still I can't believe, she thought then stopped and said, wait. What do you mean her? Naruto chuckled and said, I have learned many things throughout the years and one of them would be the truth behind the Kyuubi's attack that fateful day. What do you mean? Rin asked. If you would allow me, I have developed a technique that allows me to show people my life from the moment Kyuubi was sealed in me to right before I execute the technique. Naruto explained. She nodded amazed at the capabilities of this jutsu. She watched him go through some hand seals and he called out Ninpo, Mu Kanran Waza, ninja art, life viewing technique. She saw everything and was angered at how people could do that to a child and amazed at how he continued to live. After it was finished, she looked down, starting to cry, thinking, maybe if I stayed, I could have helped him. All I did was run away from my pain, but he faced it and continues to face it, but he doesn't run. Naruto saw this and got up and picked her up, making her squeak, and sat her in his lap and turned her head to look him in the eyes. Listen to me, Rin-chan. There was nothing you could have done. I've seen that look in my other precious people, so I know what you were thinking. You lost someone precious to you and you needed time to think and get to better know yourself. Don't think I'm ashamed of you for leaving Konoha, okay? He said, hugging her to him. Rin blushed when he added, Chan, to her name. Not even Obito did that, she thought solemnly. She quickly found herself getting comfortable in his arms and listened to him speak. He's so mature for his age and is a great leader, she thought again and nodded her head into his chest at the end. He chuckled at her and kissed the top of her head. Rin-chan, I plan to stay in Tea Country till my birthday coming up and then heading back to Fire Country to spend time with the Fire Lord and his wife till the new year, as the graduation for my age group is January 10th. Will you stay with me until then and see where this goes? I know we've just met, but I know that you could become another woman I could love. Naruto said, looking her in the eyes. She slowly nodded, not believing what this young man was making her feel. He leaned in and gave her a soft kiss on the lips before pulling back, smiling at her and running his thumb over her cheek. Rin and Naruto spent every day together. He helped her with her medical ninjutsu and she helped him to learn more about the human body. They went out on a lot of dates and he would often play an instrument for her. She was having the best time in her life and she knew she was slowly falling in love with Naruto and he was falling in love with her. His 15th birthday came and they went out for dinner. She was wearing a small black dress that ended halfway to her knees and hugged her body amazingly and wore black high-heeled shoes. He wore a white dress shirt with the top 2 buttons unbuttoned, black jeans and black shoes. They smiled at each other and kissed, and when they pulled back, Naruto said, "You look absolutely stunning, Rin-chan." She smiled and gave him another kiss, which he gladly accepted, and she replied, "And you are looking even more handsome tonight, Naru-kun." She looped her arm around his and rested her head on his shoulder, as he was an inch taller than her, and they walked to their destination. They had a great evening, and after an hour of a heavy make-out session, Naruto left her hotel room and headed back to his. He was looking forward to seeing Kyuubi, as she always surprised him on his birthdays. When he went to sleep, he appeared in the seal. It was night and he could see the fake stars and full moon. Only one more year, my love, until you're free, he thought. He continued to the house and walked in, and the only light was a flickering light coming from the bedroom. He walked up the stairs and opened the door to see candles around the room and his vixen there lying on the bed in red see-through lingerie, and that was it. Warning, Lem. Kyuubi smiled a seductive smile at her young lover and motioned for him to come over with her finger. Naruto obeyed and didn't strip, as the only thing he was wearing when he appeared in the seal were his boxers. Kyuubi slowly got up on her knees when he got on the bed. She ran her hands all over his body while they kissed. Her hands started rubbing his erection from the outside of his boxers and she smirked as he moaned. She brought her hand up and lowered it into his boxers, stroking his hard cock. Q Heim, he moaned. He started massaging her large breasts that were barely contained through the skimpy lingerie. She started moaning as well, and she paused her ministrations to let him remove her only piece of clothing, then she removed his. He gently pushed her down onto her back and kissed her on the lips again. Their tongues battled, but he won. She moaned and whined when he left her mouth, only to shiver as he kissed along her jaw, down her neck, sousing on it. He started kissing her left braise, licking her nip while massaging her right braise with his other hand. He went from licking to sousing, getting her to moan louder. He switched to her other braise and gave it the same treatment. He continued down her body, leaving kisses and nipples along the way. He arrived at her small patch of red pubic hair and rubbed his nose in it, making her shake in anticipation. He saw his prize. He'd done this many times, but it was amazing each time he looked at it. He slowly inserted a finger into her, making her moan and arch her back. He pumped it in and out. After a minute he heard her say, More Naru-kun. Give me more. He obeyed his vixen and entered 2 more fingers, going faster and faster. As she was about to climax, he stopped and pulled out, getting a whimper from her only to squeak when he lifted her and he lied down on his back with her pussy above him and his long and hard cock in front of her. She got the message and took the whole thing into her mouth, feeling it twitch. He went back to work eating her pussy out. She continued to suck while he re-entered his fingers into her and started licking and gently nibbling her clee. 2 minutes later and both of them came. He erupted into her mouth with her swallowing as much as she could and he placed his mouth over her pussy, enjoying her juices. They took a short break and he was surprised when she started positioning herself over his member. Are you sure? He gently asked her. She smiled and said, yes. I love you with all my being and I want you to be my mate Koichi. She then leaned down and kissed him while lowering herself down onto his member. They both moaned at the feeling until he felt a barrier. He looked at her and said, I'll let you do this, Koi. This is yours to give and I'll be right here. She let a few tears run down her cheeks at how much he loved her and then raised herself up, then impaled his member, breaking her hymen and taking about 5 of his 8 inches. She bit her lip at the pain and started to cry. He leaned up and hugged her, letting her get used to it. A few minutes later she kissed him and used one of her hands to lower him down. She slowly started to grind against him, moaning at the mix of pain and pleasure. Naruto placed his hands on her hips to help steady her and was moaning at how tight she was. She started to bounce up and down, and when he thrusted up as she came down, they both screamed at the wonderful sensation. Faster. Harder. Naru-kun, she yelled. He obliged and started thrusting faster and harder into her with her rhythm. He got tired of being on bottom and flipped them over. They both moaned at the new sensation as he went much deeper. He lifted her left leg over his right shoulder and started thrusting even faster and harder than before. Kyuubi was in heaven when he flipped them over, then lifted her leg. Oh Kami, she thought over and over. She had already come 3 times since they started 30 minutes ago and he had yet to, but with the way his cock was twitching and how erratic he became, she knew it was soon. Naruto knew he was close to and wanted to come together with Kyuubi. He started rubbing her clee, getting her closer to the edge. She started playing with her tits and started sousing on them when she felt it coming. Naru-kun, I'm coming, she yelled. Me too, Haim, Naruto said. A few more deep thrusts and with a yell of, Naru-kun, and, Kyuu-chan, they both cummed. He erupted into her, filling her womb and then some in her, coating his cock with her juices. He collapsed onto her large wonderful breasts and kissed them each until he leaned up and kissed her on the lips. That was simply amazing, Naru-koi, Kyuubi panted out. Indeed it was, my sweet vixen. Indeed it was, he said and fell asleep between her tits. Kyuubi heard her lover snoring lightly and looked down and smiled at the scene of him between her breasts and could still feel him in her. She wrapped her arms around him and whispered, Happy birthday Koichi, and fell asleep as well. Lem over. Naruto and Rin had left at the beginning of November. They arrived in the capital of Fire Country a week later and like Naruto promised, he visited the Fire Lord and his wife. Both were happy to see Naruto again and after a quick ninpo, Mu Kanran Waza ninja art, life viewing technique, to inform Nobunaga and Shijimi of what had happened since he left them, they spent the rest of their time together. Shijimi took a quick liking to Rin, much to Rin's embarrassment, and kept asking when Naruto planned to marry all of his girls, which made Rin blush and blush harder when she heard Naruto say, soon. During his stay he met a woman by the name of Emi. She was beautiful with black hair that reached her mid-back, brown eyes, large C-cup breasts, long legs, wide hips and a great SS. She worked at a tailor shop that belonged to her parents. He invited her and her parents to dinner with the Fire Lord, and at first they thought it was a joke and didn't believe him until the Fire Lord himself appeared in their shop. Suffice to say they had dinner that night at the palace. She was confused when she saw Rin there and how Naruto and her were acting and felt hurt until Naruto showed them his life. To say the 3 were shocked would be an understatement. Here in front of them was the son of the Yondaime Hokage and the king of Whirlpool. He could see the looks of confusion in their eyes and explained. The reason I showed you all of that is because of my bloodlines. I am allowed to marry at least 20 women for each bloodline, and since I have 3, that allows me to marry at least 60 women in Konoha alone due to a law there. There are already other women who I love like Rin-chan here, and each know of the law and have agreed to share me. I am telling you because I have slowly fallen for you, Emmy. I love your smile, your laugh, the way you sneeze. I love everything about you, and I would like for you to join my family. As you each saw, I plan to reveal myself to the world during the Chunin exams in a year in Konoha, and I would love it if you were at my side the next day. He said, then gave her the most intense and passionate kiss she had ever received. Her parents were astounded at what they heard. Their little girl was being sought after by a king and the son of the Yondaime, and by the look on her face she didn't object, especially after that kiss. They quickly gave their blessing and asked for many grandchildren, much to the embarrassment of Emi and Naruto, who both blushed, and everyone laughed with the future parents-in-law's planning ways of teasing the couple. Naruto spent time with Emi and Rin, Nobunaga and Shimiji, and his future parents-in-law, where he was sure his face was going to stay red with all the teasing they did. It was January 1st, and it was time for Naruto to return to Konohagakure. They had agreed to have Rin and Emi stay at the capital until the time came. He kissed both of them and hugged them, followed by a hug from Emi's mother, Shijimi, Emi's father, then finally Nobunaga. He walked out of the capital on the path towards Konoha. Get ready, Konoha, because guess who's coming back? It was morning, and a figure standing tall at 5 feet 9 inches was walking towards Konoha. He had blue eyes and blonde spiky hair that reached the bottom of his neck, with his bangs covering his forehead. He had a face that belonged to royalty, with no baby fat and 3 whisker-like mark lines on each cheek. One could tell he had a body women would love to touch and men would love to have. He was wearing black steel-toed boots, black Anbu pants, a long dark blue-sleeved shirt, and a customized flak jacket that had many more pockets than the usual flak jacket. On his left thigh he had his weapons holster containing his shuriken and kunai. Over that he was wearing a white cloak that had a picture of a storm with winds creating waves and whirlpools on the back, with red-orange flames on the bottom of the cloak. He had his kodachis strapped to his lower back that were hidden behind the cloak. He could see the gates up ahead and thought, I'm back. He decided to have a little fun, and out of sight from the guards at the gate and the Anbu close by, he used a Kaminari Shunshin no Jutsu, lightning body flicker technique, and appeared in the Hokage's office. The Sandaime was going through paperwork when he sensed someone coming. He was shocked, as were the Anbu in the room, when a bolt of lightning appeared and a man was standing there. They were even more shocked at his appearance. Minato, Hiruzen thought. Naruto was holding in his laughter at his Gigi's face. He grinned and said, I promised that I'd return, didn't I, Gigi? Sarutobi was broken from his thoughts and stuttered, Naruto, is that you? The one and only. If you don't mind, could you ask the Anbu in the room to leave and not to mention my return? Naruto asked. Sarutobi could only nod and motioned with his hands, and they both felt the Anbu leave. Sarutobi was about to say something when he saw Naruto go through some hand seals and placed a privacy jutsu up. So how you been? Naruto asked with a grin on his face. I should be asking you that, Naruto-kun. I see you've gotten stronger over the years. May I ask how you chose to wear those types of clothing? Sarutobi questioned. Naruto sighed and looked his Gigi in the eyes and the face and said, I know everything, Gigi. I've known since my 5th birthday. The truth about Kyuubi and why she attacked, and about my parents, Namikaze Minato and Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina. Sarutobi felt like he had a stroke. How? He asked. After the attack I appeared in my mindscape where the seal is. I met Kyuubi and she explained why she attacked. I also met my parents there along with the Shinigami. Apparently after Otu-san died, the Shinigami told him why Kyuubi attacked. Otu-san asked when I would first meet Kyuubi, that the Shinigami would take him there so we could meet. He also took my Okawa-san, as well as he felt that with how my life had been so far I deserved to see both of my parents. Naruto explained. Sarutobi was gobsmacked at what Naruto said. I guess that would explain his disappearances during that year, he thought, then realized what Naruto said and said, she. Naruto chuckled and said, yes, Kyuubi is a female and the first love of my life. He felt Kyuubi give him a mental kiss that made him smile. What? Was all Sarutobi could say. Tell me, Gigi, what do you know of how the seal was supposed to work? Naruto questioned. Well, not much actually, only that it would slowly convert Kyuubi's chakra into yours and that it would allow Kyuubi's chakra to heal you. He replied. Naruto nodded at that and said, that's only part of it. The seal originally would convert Kyuubi's chakra into my own as well as heal me until it would finish on my 25th birthday. Then Kyuubi could either go to the afterlife with Shinigami or she could be free of the seal and become human with cage-level strength. Now I say originally because of the attack on my 5th birthday, Kyuubi couldn't get enough of her chakra through the seal to heal me and I was dying. In order to keep me alive, the Shinigami altered the seal. The seal would finish on my 16th birthday instead of my 25th. Also, since I had more of Kyuubi's demonic chakra running through me, I developed a third bloodline. As he listened to his Magamusuko speak, he was able to remain calm until he heard the part third bloodline. What does demonic chakra have to do with bloodlines? He asked. Naruto smirked and said, well, I could tell you, but I think it'd be better if I showed you. I have created a technique that allows me to show my life from the point when Kyuubi was sealed into me to right before I execute the technique, thanks to mine and Kyuubi's photographic memory. He went through 15 hand seals and called out Ninpo, Mu Kanran Waza, ninja art, life viewing technique. Sarutobi watched Naruto's life from the moment Kyuubi was sealed into him to right before he started the jutsu. He saw when he denied Danzo making Naruto a weapon after he was born, to when he met Kyuubi where he had a major nosebleed and passed out, making Naruto pause the technique multiple times and threatened his Gigi he would tell his wife where he hid all his Ika, and after that he managed to stay awake. He saw Naruto's parents again and smiled at the reunion. He barely managed to hold back a nosebleed when he heard how his third bloodline was passed down to his lovers. Sarutobi was astounded when it was all over. Remarkable. To think he could beat me right now is amazing. Not to mention all those lovely girls of his. He let out a perverted giggle at that and stopped when he felt Naruto glaring at him. He coughed and said, so what do you plan on doing now? I plan to take the test tomorrow and become a genin. As you saw, I have spies in various locations but kept their identities secret for personal and security reasons. Orochimaru has built his own village and has been gathering a lot more nin recently than usual. I can only assume he plans to attack Konoha during the Chunin exams later this year, and I plan to be there to stop him and to reveal myself to the world. I already have the support of the daimyos of the 5 great shinobi countries and other countries as well. Naruto stated. Sarutobi nodded and took a long drag from his pipe. I know you already have the teams set up, and once they pass their test from their Junin sensei, I'll let you know what I have planned, as I know teamwork is important. Naruto said. Sarutobi nodded as he was thinking of where to place Naruto. He saw him grin and asked, what is it? Naruto chuckled and said, as you know, right now I could kick your SS, but if you were back in your prime we'd be even. Well, over the years Q-chan has taught me many jutsu lost over the centuries. One happens to be one of the first attempts humans made at immortality, eternal youth. While it was effective as the target would become younger, it would slowly destroy the body of the user to the point if they use it too long they die. Also, the younger you make the person, the more chakra it requires, and you need at least mid-Junin level chakra control. Through more research they found out that for every 10 years off the target's life would require enough chakra of a kage. They also found out it was also a one-time per person jutsu. Now, because of my healing abilities, the damage to my body is negated and I am able to use this jutsu. Because of all this, I have labeled it an S-ranked kinjutsu that will become a family technique, as only my family would be able to use it and survive. So what do you say, Gigi? Would you and your wife like to become 40 again? The professor, as one of the titles Sarutobi Hiruzen was known as, was drooling at the thought of being young again. After a few questions about the technique, Sarutobi agreed to it. He stood in the middle of the room and watched as Naruto started going through hand seals that he could barely see thanks to his years of experience and sharp eyes. After Naruto landed on the 100th hand seal, he called out Ninpo, Teimu no Gyukuden, ninja art, reversal of time. Naruto went through about a sixth of his reserves as he watched his Gigi of 68 years old turn to a 40-year-old. The process lasted a minute, and when it was finished, Naruto looked at the results. No longer was his hair white but brown again. His muscle mass returned and he filled out his robes more. As Naruto was looking over the results, Sarutobi was as well. His hands were no longer wrinkly as well as his face. He walked over to the bathroom in his office and looked in the mirror. He looked exactly like he did when he was 40. He walked back out and hugged this young man that he saw as his Magamusuko for the first time in over 9 years. They agreed to a fight in 1 month to let Sarutobi get readjusted to his body and to keep a genjutsu up for now. Naruto promised to come over to the Sarutobi estate in a few days for dinner and to see Sarutobi's wife and to make her younger as well. When they were done, they noticed it was already 5 p.m. Naruto handed a piece of paper with names of people he wanted Sarutobi to summon in secret to his office to watch the tests. He agreed, and Sarutobi gave him a piece of paper to give to the Ninja Academy instructor named Yumino Iruka that would be giving him his test. Naruto gave one last hug and dropped the privacy jutsu before using a Mizu Shunshin no Jutsu to appear outside his clan home. Sarutobi watched him leave and thought, "You truly have become an amazing person, Naruto-kun." With that, he took out his precious Ika. Naruto opened the gate to the Namikaze estates, and with a quick Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu he ordered them to clean up the grounds and houses. While they did that, Naruto entered the main house and headed up to the main bedroom. He unpacked his clothing and personal supplies. After that, he headed to the clan library, and after taking an hour to replace all the scrolls that he had taken and stored in the seal, he took a shower and got dressed in black shinobi sandals, blue jeans and a white shirt. He picked up his scroll labeled instruments and headed out. He decided to have some dinner first, and there was only one place he had in mind. As he walked through the streets, he saw the looks of lust the women were giving him and the looks of jealousy the men were giving him. He also saw a lot of shocked faces on the older generation. Either they think I look like dad or they notice the whisker marks, or a combination of both, he thought. After a few more minutes he arrived. Ichiraku ramen, he thought and smiled. He walked in and sat at his old stool. He looked around and saw Yame serving some ramen to a customer and Tyuki in the back cooking. Tyuki hadn't changed much. His hair had a few gray hairs in it, but that was it. Ayame, though, became a real beauty. She still had her brown hair tied up and those brown eyes that seemed to sparkle. Her body had developed very nicely since the little 8-year-old girl when he left. Her body had curves in all the right places, nice large round and firm C-cup breasts, long legs, wide hips and a perfect SS that seemed to bounce as she walked. He smiled and called out, "I'd like 10 of each type of ramen." He saw Ayame freeze and turn around. He smiled at her and said, "It's been a while, hasn't it, Ayame-chan?" Ayame started to cry and she ran to him yelling, "Naruto-kun." Tyuki ran out just in time to see his daughter hugging a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He wasn't positive until he saw the whisker marks, which he noticed had faded. Naruto stood up when he saw Ayame come running. She leapt into his arms and he swung her around, getting her to giggle. He settled down and sat in the stool with her in his lap. She was still crying and he placed his hand under her chin and raised her head to look her in the eye. "Shush, it's okay, Ayame-chan. I promised I'd come back and I never break my promises." He rubbed her back with one hand and ran his other hand through her hair. She calmed down after a few minutes, and after a kiss that was very close to her lips she blushed and got up. Tyuki raised an eyebrow at the display of affection between the two. I wonder if this is why Ayame has declined every date she's been offered, he thought. He knew Ayame liked Naruto when they were younger and she was heartbroken when he left, but he didn't think she liked him like that. Hee my little girl's in love, he thought with chuckle. Naruto stayed there until 8 p.m. They had closed early and Ayame had ended back on Naruto's lap and would sometimes feed him. Naruto told them the truth and showed them his life. Ayame was shocked that Naruto was the son of the Yondaime and a king, but Yuki had a pretty good idea who Naruto's parents were, with Minato and Kushina often coming here for ramen, but the whole king thing was news to him. Ayame squealed and tackled Naruto to the ground in a passionate kiss when she found out about the CRA. Naruto, stunned at first, quickly got into it. They were both moaning and had their hands running over each other's body when a cough interrupted them. They both blushed as Yuki was looking at them. Before he left, Naruto invited Ayame to come with him to the hot springs. With permission from her father, she took off her apron and looped her arm around Naruto and they headed off. They arrived and after he paid, he gave Ayame another kiss that made her knees weak and they went to the separate baths. Naruto undressed and wrapped a towel around his waist. He placed a bit of his blood on the seal and unrolled his scroll, and after finding the instrument he wanted, unsealed it, then rolled up the scroll again and placed it with his belongings. When Naruto walked into the hot springs, he noticed he was the only male. He relaxed for a couple minutes before picking up his ocarina and started to play it. Even though he was the only male here, Ayame found out she wasn't the only female. 20 minutes before they appeared, a group of women arrived ranging from 17 years old to 36 years old at the hot springs. Each was a vision of beauty. They decided to do this as after tomorrow they'd have less time to see each other. This group consisted of Inuzuka Hana, Inuzuka Sume, Mitarashi Anko, Tsubaki, Uchiha Makoto, Azuki Yugao and Yuhi Kurenai. As they settled in, they relaxed for a couple minutes before the lavender-haired, gray-eyed Anko spoke up, "So tomorrow's the big day, huh? You think your boys will pass?" The feral brown-haired with eyes brown in vertical slit-like pupils with the traditional fang-like tattoos of the Inuzuka clan on both of her cheeks in purple Sume spoke, "Yeah, Kiba may be an idiot but he'll pass." Hana and the others laughed at that. They looked at the raven-haired, black-eyed Makoto who sighed, "Unfortunately I'm positive he'll pass. To be honest, he's too unstable to be a shinobi, but that damn civilian council and elders have practically already made it official." After that night he's thought of nothing except revenge. The others looked at Makoto sadly. They each knew she was right, and with the majority of villagers kissing his ass and making his already huge ego bigger, it was only a matter of time until he completely loses it. Anko spoke again, trying to change the topic. "So Yugao, you still together with Hayate?" Yugao, with her purple hair, dark brown eyes and Anbu symbol on her upper right arm, shook her head. "No, that ended a couple months ago. It just didn't feel right." Yugao looked at Kurenai. "What about you, Kurenai? You and Asuma still going out?" The raven-haired crimson-eye beauty shook her head as well. "No, we broke up a few months ago as well. We decided to just stay as good friends." Hana, with her traditional fang-like tattoos of the Inuzuka clan on both of her cheeks in red, a tattoo on her upper right arm that resembles a flower, and round soft eyes, looked over at Tsubaki. "What about you and Mizuki? You two seem to be getting friendly." Tsubaki, with her raven-colored hair and black eyes, also shook her head. "That didn't last very long. I just didn't feel very comfortable around him. It was like he was pretending to be someone he's not around me." They each sighed at the lack of a love life. Suddenly Sume spoke out. "He'd be graduating tomorrow as well." They all knew who she was talking about. Each had a spot in their heart that belonged to the little boy and were sad to learn he left Konoha. The Hokage had told them that Naruto promised to return to take the graduation test with his age group. They were broken from their thoughts when they heard music coming from the male's side of the hot spring. Just as it started, Ayame walked in and joined them. They each recognized her as the waitress that worked with her father at the ramen stand that Naruto loved. She smiled and said, "Hello," to them. They smiled and said, "Hello," back. They each listened to the beautiful music coming from the other side of the fence. Anko, being the curious person she is, approached the fence and used her chakra to cut a small hole to look through. She looked around until she spotted the person. Damn, she thought. She could only see his upper chest, but what an upper chest it was. She started drooling, which the other girls noticed. If Anko was doing that, then a god among men must be on the other side. Hana, Sume, Makoto and Yugao each made their own hole. Kurenai couldn't believe how perverted her friends were. When the four made their holes, they each blushed and had a bit of drool coming from their mouths. When Makoto saw his face, she gasped, "It couldn't be. Those eyes are the same ones from the person who saved me," she thought. Anko had dragged Kurenai over while Sume dragged Tsubaki and Hana dragged Ayame. Kurenai started protesting but stopped when she saw Naruto's body and started to blush and had a bit of blood running from her nose. Naruto had finished playing some songs and after an hour decided to leave. Each girl had a hole and had been watching him the entire time. When he got up and out of the hot spring, they blushed harder at seeing his SS, but when he turned around they had a clear view of his prized possession. So big, they each thought, amazed and involuntarily let out a moan and a shiver. When he started drying himself off, they saw as he became hard and each were blown back with nosebleeds at the sight of his 8-inch long and 1.5-inch thick COC. Naruto knew that they were watching him the entire time and decided to have some fun, which is why he decided to give them the free show. He chuckled and raised his voice so they could hear, "Well, I hope you girls enjoyed the entire show. I hope to meet the beautiful faces that belong to those lovely voices. I'll meet you outside Ayame-chan," and with that he got dressed and waited for Ayame. When the girls heard him they all blushed, then shot a look at Ayame that demanded, "Who the hell is that?" Ayame giggled and said, "That wonderful gift from Kami ladies was Uzumaki Naruto. He returned today, and to let you know, due to a certain law he is allowed to marry multiple women in Konoha alone, and because of a special ability of his, age doesn't matter to him." With that hint she left them with their stunned faces and got dressed and rejoined Naruto. She told him what she said, hoping he wouldn't be mad, and was rewarded with the most intense kiss she'd received yet. He picked her up, getting an "eep" from her and held her bridal style, and after a quick Shunshin no Jutsu appeared in her room. They lied in bed together and talked. She told him the names of each of the women that were at the hot springs when he asked. He waited until she fell asleep, and after a soft kiss he bid her good night and reappeared outside his estate. He let himself in and looked at the now clean again estate. He stripped down to his boxers and looked at the clock and noticed it was already 10 p.m. He yawned and thought, "Night koi." He received a night koishi in return. Naruto woke up at 5 a.m. and after getting dressed in training clothes he grabbed an apple and spent 2 hours training. He went back into the house, took a shower, got dressed in what he wore yesterday except his cloak, ate a real meal worthy of the black hole called his stomach, and when he finished he noticed it was 7:40. He put the dishes in the sink and left his compound. As he closed the gate behind him and locked it, he used a Kori Shunshin no Jutsu, ice body flicker technique, where his body was covered in ice and shattered, then reformed on the head of his father on the Hokage monument and shattered again, revealing him. He looked down at the village for a few minutes, then used Konoha Shunshin no Jutsu, leaf body flicker technique, to make a quick stop at the Hokage tower, then on the roof of the academy. He slowly made his way down to the room where the test was. Iruka had just entered with his company instructor Mizuki. He noticed almost everyone was here. He heard yelling coming from outside in the hall and he sighed, thinking, "Please Kami, let them pass so I don't have to deal with them." Just as he finished his thought, 2 young girls appeared when the door opened at the same time, resulting being wedged in the doorway. "Ha, take that, Ino pig. I was first so I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun," Haruno Sakura said. She had bright pink hair that reached her mid-back and looked to have been well kept, green eyes and fair skin. She wore a red kipao dress with white circular designs and tight dark green shorts. "I was first, forehead girl. I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun," Yamanaka Ino replied. She had blue eyes and long blonde hair in a ponytail with bangs covering the right side of her face. She wore a purple outfit that had bandages wrapped around her stomach. Iruka was about to lose it and yell at them until a voice reached everyone's ears. Forgive me for intruding, but you can both sit next to him as there are open seats on both sides of him. Everyone looked behind the two girls and saw the person. He was standing tall at 5 feet 9 inches. He had blue eyes and blonde spiky hair that reached the bottom of his neck with his bangs covering his forehead. He had a face that belonged to royalty with no baby fat and 3 faded whisker-like mark lines on each cheek. He was wearing black steel-toed boots, black Anbu pants, a long dark blue-sleeved shirt and a customized flak jacket that had many more pockets than the usual flak jacket. On his left thigh he had his weapons holster containing his shuriken and kunai. He had 2 kodachis strapped to his lower back. He's hotter than Sasuke-kun, all the girls thought. Naruto smiled at the 2 girls in front of him, making them blush. Shall we enter and let the instructor get started? He asked. They squeaked and ran into the room, taking a seat on either side of Sasuke, keeping quiet. Everyone watched him enter and Iruka spoke, "Can I help you?" Naruto reached into a pocket on his pants and pulled out a piece of paper. He handed it to Iruka, who read it and his eyes widened, which everyone noticed. I see. Well, take a seat and we'll begin the tests. They consist of a written portion, accuracy portion and jutsu portion. Before you sit down, can you introduce yourself? Naruto nodded and looked toward the students. Hello. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I have just returned to Konoha yesterday after traveling the world for 9 years. I hope to make Konoha proud and make friends with all of you. He finished and found a seat in the back and sat next to a boy who had his head lying on the desk. He had fairly long jet black hair tied in a spiky ponytail and narrow brown eyes. His attire was rather plain, wearing a short jacket and also translucent undershirt. Must be a Nara, he thought. Mizuki's eyes widened when he heard the name. The demon brat is back. Oh, this is perfect, he thought. Everyone watched him as he took a seat. They were all wondering why he got to come on the last day while they've been here for 7 years. Kiba was the one who voiced his complaints. What the hell? How come this nobody gets to come on the last day while we've been stuck here for 7 freaking years? Everybody started agreeing and Iruka raised his hand to silence them. The Hokage has personally given his permission for Naruto to take today's tests. He has judged his skills to be good enough to qualify to become a genin. Iruka and Mizuki started handing out papers. Mizuki came up the stairs, Naruto did, and as Naruto watched he saw Mizuki place a genjutsu on his test. Well, I guess I know what he thinks of me, Naruto thought. As Mizuki turned around and started going back down the steps trying to hold in his smile, he froze when he heard Naruto talk. I'm honored that you think so highly of my skills already, Instructor-san. Mizuki turned around as Iruka and everyone else looked at Naruto. What do you mean? Mizuki asked. Well, the genjutsu you placed on my test to change the questions, of course. Since I can't detect any other genjutsu coming from the other tests in the room, I assumed you were giving me a challenge. Naruto replied with a smile. Mizuki started to sweat when Iruka said, Mizuki, is this true? Yeah, you caught me. I wanted to see if what the Hokage said was true. Mizuki chuckled nervously. Iruka eyed him for a second and said, very well, but let me know if you plan of doing something creative like that in the future. Mizuki just smiled and continued down the steps. Damn, that was too close, he thought. Naruto dispelled the genjutsu and chuckled when he heard the Nara next to him say, Nara Shikamaru. What was that about? Oh, he just wanted to play a game and lost. Naruto replied. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow at the terminology but let it go. Naruto finished the test in 10 minutes. Geez, I seriously hope the rest of the tests are harder than this. I knew all this stuff when I was 6. He sighed and laid his head down on his arms. Shikamaru chuckled at the sight and followed 10 minutes later. Naruto scored the highest on the written exam with a perfect score of 10 out of 10. Shikamaru surprisingly put effort into it and aced it as well, Sakura getting a 9/10, Ino, Hinata, Shino all getting 8/10, Sasuke, a student by the name of Sai and Choji got 7/10 and Kiba got a 6/10. They followed Iruka and Mizuki out to the target dummies. Alright, now let's begin with the target practice. First up, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto walked up and drew 8 kunai and 8 shuriken from his weapon holster. He looked on with a bored face and threw all of them together, and each kunai and shuriken hit one of the 8 vital organs. Iruka and everyone else were astounded, and Iruka spoke, "Sikon, congratulations. A 10 out of 10. Sasuke went up next with an angry look on his face. He got a 9/10 and he only got angrier. Hinata, Sai and Shino got 9/10 as well. Ino, Shikamaru and Choji got 8/10. Sakura got 7/10 and Kiba got 6/10. For the last test they returned to the classroom, where there on the table were numerous hite. They went from the beginning of the list this time. Sasuke smirked at Naruto when he walked by him, though Naruto just ignored it. Alright Naruto, to pass you need to perform the Kawarimi no Jutsu, Henge no Jutsu, and create at least 3 Bunshin no Jutsu. Iruka said. That's it? Naruto asked. Iruka nodded his head and Naruto sighed. So much for them using the extra 3 years effectively, he thought. He quickly performed the Henge no Jutsu and transformed into the Yondaime, then used Kawarimi no Jutsu to replace with Mizuki, then back again, then finally created 3 Bunshin no Jutsu, and there were now 4 Yondaimes standing there. Iruka, Mizuki, the students, and the others who were watching were shocked at the display. For one, he performed all 3 techniques without hand seals or calling out the name, then he replaced with Mizuki, and to be able to do that the user's chakra would have to overpower the target's chakra. Naruto dispelled the clones and Henge, and Iruka shakily handed him a hit. C-C, congratulations, he said. Naruto took it and tied it around his forehead, and with his bangs you could barely see it. He looks even more like the Yondaime now, Iruka thought. Naruto went back up to his seat and sat next to Shikamaru. He, Choji, and to the shock of everyone, Shino congratulated him. He smiled at them and thanked them. Iruka just shook his head and cleared his throat. Congratulations to each of you. You are now ninja of Konohagakure. Remember to serve her with honor. With that he dismissed them and watched as a majority ran out to meet their parents. He watched as Naruto head the other way toward the steps leading to the roof. Back before the tests had begun, Naruto had stopped by the Hokage Tower and added some people to the list he gave Sarutobi of people to summon to his office to watch the tests. They were Hatake Kakashi, Sarutobi Asuma, Yuhi Kurenai, Mitarashi Anko, 2 of his personal Anbu Neko, Azuki Yugao, and Yamato Tenzo, the clan heads and their spouses, Inuzuka Hana and her nin dogs, as well as Sume's nin dog, Tsubaki, and the Ichirakus. Sarutobi had sent his personal Anbu to summon each one of them to make sure the civilian council or the elders didn't find out. Sarutobi put up a privacy jutsu, cleared his throat and spoke up, "Thank you all for coming on short notice. Yesterday one of Konoha's heroes returned and will be taking the tests as he promised, and he thought that you would all enjoy this year's graduation tests." When he said that, everyone's eyes widened, and the only females that he could see weren't blushing were the wives of the clan heads and Neko, as she had her mask on, but he noticed her fidgeting. He activated his Tomegan no Jutsu, telescope technique, on his crystal ball, and they all started to watch. Everyone was shocked, and all the women, even the married ones, blushed when they first saw him. He looks just like the Yondaime. And, he looks just like you, sensei, were some of the thoughts going around. They watched as he caught the genjutsu Mizuki used, and the Hokage made a mental note to send him to Ibiki later. They saw him get a perfect score on the accuracy test when he hit all 8 vital points at the same time with both kunai and shuriken. Not even Kakashi did that. Then they finally watched as he performed the 3 Academy Jutsu without hand seals or saying the name. Sarutobi ended the technique and leaned back into the chair and watched his guests. He could tell Kakashi wanted to leave right away to see Naruto and the stunned faces on everyone else. Hiyashi spoke up and said, "What now?" Everyone, even Sarutobi, was startled by a voice saying, "First of all, I'm a bit disappointed in the teachings of the academy. That was the same test that students had to take when the graduation age was still 12 for Kami's sake. Anyways, I believe it's time you all learn the truth. They looked behind them and saw Naruto coming out of a shadow. What do you mean truth? Hiashi asked. The truth of Kyuubi's attack, the truth about my heritage, the truth about where 90% of the world's bloodlines come from, the truth of what Gigi actually looks like now, and the truth of what my life has been like since the moment Kyuubi was sealed in me. Naruto finished. They all raised an eyebrow at the part of what the Hokage actually looks like. Naruto nodded towards the Hokage and the others watched as a genjutsu came off. There in front of him was a 40-year-old Sarutobi Hiruzen. Dad, why you're young again? How? Asuma asked. That is one of the many things that will be explained. Naruto said. He looked at their shocked and confused faces. Prepare yourself and try not to pass out, as it gets really annoying as I have to pause the jutsu if you do. Naruto said, glaring at the Hokage who was whistling innocently. He sighed at his Gigi before going through 15 hand seals that was too quick for anyone to see the entire length and called out Ninpo, Mu Kanran Waza, ninja art, life viewing technique. With that they all watched Naruto's life. They watched the council meeting when Sarutobi brought Naruto only a few hours old and denied the civilian council's demands of killing him and Danzo's demands of turning him into a weapon. They saw him getting kicked out of the orphanage on his 4th birthday to living on the streets for 6 months. When they saw the events that happened on his 5th birthday, all the women were in tears and Makoto was glad some members of her clan were dead. They learned the truth of Orochimaru's and Uchiha Madara's involvement in Kyuubi's attack. Makoto was shocked when she found out about the truth behind bloodlines and that her clan stole their power from Kyuubi and the results it has caused. They all learned it was Naruto that saved Hinata from the Kumo ambassador and Makoto the night Itachi massacred the clan. They watched his life as he traveled the world and how he possessed 3 of the 4 legendary summoning contracts. The women finally understood what a Yame meant when they found out about the CRA and his 3rd bloodline. Kakashi was surprised to see Rin and was happy she found someone to love. The political power he held was also astonishing to them. Finally it ended and Naruto immediately created 7 shadow clones to comfort Hana, Tsume, Tsubaki, Anko, Kurenai, Ayame and Yugao while he personally comforted Makoto. All the guys were astounded at how he could handle so many women. He had each one sitting in his lap as he sat on the floor. After a few minutes the women remained in the laps of their clones enjoying feeling their hands running through their hair. Naruto smiled at Makoto and whispered something in her ear. She nodded and he kissed her cheek making her blush and she left his lap. He got up and walked over to Kakashi. I found this while in grass country. When I was in Kiri I had the best swordsmith there to fix it. Naruto said. He opened the scroll and unsealed something Kakashi thought he'd never see again. My father's Hako Chakura to white light chakra saber, Kakashi thought. He grabbed it and could feel his chakra running through it. I thought it was the least I could do for everything you've done for me, Aniki. Naruto said. Kakashi's eyes widened and he smiled and said, you never have to thank me for protecting family Ototo. With that he hugged Naruto. The Hokage and the others smiled at the scene. They all spoke for about an hour when Kakashi asked, Hokage-sama, what do you plan to do with Naruto for the teams? Actually Naruto told me that he has a plan for that. Care to share, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked. Well, I was going to wait until they pass their test from their Junin-sensei, but I guess I can tell you now. It's simple really. After Asuma, Aniki, and Kurenai-chan pass their teams we'll all meet up the next day and introduce ourselves. I can join them on any missions that have them leaving the village while I plan to do most of my missions alone. You all know my skills and the only person on par with me is Gigi, so I plan to do missions ranging from D rank for quick cash to S rank. They all nodded at that. When it was over Sarutobi advised them that this was a SSS rank secret and must not be spoken of again even to each other. They nodded and left the office directly with a Shunshin no Jutsu. Naruto and his clones went with their associated woman, and after a passionate make-out session with each girl that even had Sume losing at his dominance that turned her on, he told them that they'd be seeing a lot more of each other soon. When he received the memory of where Anko lived, he quickly remembered something important, and after a Shunshin no Jutsu appeared in front of her apartment. He knocked on it and Anko opened it. She had already taken off her coat and he could see more of her sexy body. Anko saw this and smirked. Like what you see, Naruto-kun. She was shocked and smiled at his answer as he looked her in her eyes. You are a goddess, my hubby Haim. She grabbed him and slammed her lips onto his. After a few minutes of kissing they broke apart. So what did you need, Naruto-kun? Anko asked. Naruto grabbed her hand and led her to the couch. He sat her down and took a scroll from his flak jacket, and when he unsealed the items he saw the stunned look on her face. That's my mother's necklace. I thought I'd never see it again. Where did you find it? She asked with tears in her eyes. He sat down next to her and said, I found it in a room along with the picture and journal in one of Orochimaru's compounds in Sea Country. I knew I recognized the younger version of you before I left, so I took them with me until I could return them to you. She grabbed him again and kissed him with everything she had. When they broke apart, he grabbed the necklace and walked behind her. She lifted her hair and shivered as he kissed and nibbled her neck. He finally fastened the chain around her neck and turned her head back towards him and kissed her. She moaned into the kiss with tears in her eyes. She never thought she would find a man that would love her, but here he was, and he's already done the nicest thing anybody's ever done for her, and he didn't even know her. Anko Haim, tomorrow we're going to go back to the Hokage Tower. I'll inform the other girls to meet us there. I plan to rid you of that seal once and for all. I've already done it for the others, as you saw. Never again will you have to feel dirty wearing that seal. Naruto said with her in his lap. Anko, for the first time in her life, was honestly happy. He picked her up bridal style and carried her to her room. He stripped her down to her bra and panties, and she stripped him down to his boxers, and they fell asleep in each other's arms, with Anko having the first peaceful sleep in a long time. When Naruto awoke, he found himself not in his bedroom and felt something on his chest. Quickly remembering where he was, he looked down and saw Anko's head on his gnawed chest. He smiled as he saw the smile and peaceful look on her face. He stroked her hair for a few minutes before noting what time it was and created a shadow clone and ordered it to make breakfast. A half-hour later, Anko started to wake as she smelled something delicious. She felt someone kiss her forehead and heard them say, "Good morning. Breakfast will be here soon." She looked up and saw Naruto's smiling face. "It's real," he heard her whisper. He leaned down and captured her lips in a kiss. "Yes, it's real, Mitarashi Anko. I know this is happening kind of fast as we only met yesterday, but I do care for you, and while I can't say I love you yet, if you're willing to give me a chance, I know that this can work." Anko smiled and kissed him. They were interrupted when Naruto's clone walked in with 2 trays. When the clone placed the tray in Anko's lap and stole a kiss from her, she finally noticed that she was only in her purple bra and panties and him only in boxers. She blushed as she remembered them undressing each other and their hands roaming over each other's body. "I can't believe I did that. We only met yesterday and yet I already feel so comfortable around him, and wow, I still can't believe what an amazing body he has in his large equipment." Anko thought and had a bit of blood drip from her nose. Naruto noticed this and used his pointer finger to wipe it away, and she watched as he placed it in his mouth. "OMG, that was hot. I thought only I did that." Anko thought. Sweet. I can't wait to taste more, Anko-chan." Naruto said with a grin and kissed her cheek. Anko shivered, and before she lost it and jumped him, giving him her virginity. Yes, she's 24 and a virgin. Remember, not many people like her, so her love life is practically non-existent, and she isn't going to just fuck some random guy. She focused her attention on the tray in her lap. She saw a plate with eggs, pancakes, sausages, and a glass of orange juice. She cut a slice of the pancakes and took a bite. Her face glazed over before she returned to normal and ravaged her plate. Naruto chuckled and said, "I'm glad you like it, hubby Haim. We'll head over to the Hokage Tower at noon. That should give enough time for Kurenai-chan to get her team today and give them the test if she's doing it today and for the rest of the girls to arrive. Anko nodded, excited to finally be relieved of this seal. She smiled at him with her cheeks puffed out with food in them and a fork in her mouth. Naruto laughed at the scene and begun to eat his food. They each took a shower and got dressed. They had spent the morning together at her place talking and learning more about each other. When the time came, he grabbed her hand and pulled her to him. She wrapped her arms around his waist and he used a high Shunshin no Jutsu, fire body flicker technique, and the two appeared in the Hokage's office. The fire receded and Anko stepped back and said, "You've gotta teach me how to do that, Naru-kun." Naruto noticed everyone nodded their head. "I'd love to. It's actually pretty easy to do once you figure it out," Naruto said. He looked around and the only other male besides him was the Hokage. "Good to see you, Gigi, Hana-chan, Sum-chan, Tsubaki-chan, Makoto-chan, Yugao-chan, Kurenai-chan. How is everyone doing?" Naruto greeted and asked. The women smiled at him and each gave him a kiss on the lips. Lucky bastard, the Hokage thought with a nosebleed. He wiped it away before anyone noticed and coughed to get their attention. "It's good to see you as well, Naruto-kun. Are you ready to remove Anko's curse seal?" the Hokage asked. Naruto nodded his head and said, "Hi, I am Hokage-sama." Sarutobi knew Naruto was serious if he addressed him like that. "Good. May I ask though why you wanted these women here?" "I figured Anko-chan would like to have her friends here, and since I need her to remove some clothing I didn't want any males here, and even though I love you, Gigi, I'm going to have to kick you out as well," Naruto said. Anko was glad Naruto thought of that, and while she loved the Hokage as a grandfather as well, she knew he was still one of the biggest perverts she knew. The Hokage nodded and entered the sleeping quarters attached to the office. Naruto placed a privacy jutsu up so no one could enter and turned back to Anko. "Alright, Anko-chan, I need you sit down and remove your coat and shirt so I can draw the seals." Anko nodded and complied. Naruto moved next to her and ran his fingers across the seal, making her shiver. He unsealed his things and began drawing the seals. When he was done, he told Anko, "This is going to hurt, Anko-chan." She nodded and he went through 25 hand seals and yelled out Fuinjutsu, Bachi Fu Heiho, sealing arts, curse seal removal. The others watched as the seals started circling around before entering Anko's curse seal, making her scream. They then watched as Naruto's eyes widened and his hands started glowing white and she quieted down. After 5 minutes he stopped and was panting hard and looked at her neck, smiling at seeing her seal gone. "Congratulations, Anko-chan. You're finally free," Naruto said. Anko put on her shirt and was about to get up to hug Naruto when he started to wobble and fell into her lap. The others screamed, "Naruto," and ran to him. The Hokage heard and ran into the room. He saw Naruto face first in Anko's lap, panting hard. "What happened?" he questioned. Sum spoke up. "We don't know. He removed the seal and then he started to wobble and fell." Naruto groaned and said, "While I wouldn't mind being in this position further along in our relationship, Anko-chan, could you help me turn around?" Anko and the others all blushed while Sarutobi was blown back by a nosebleed. Once the Hokage awoke and Naruto's head was on Anko's lap with her hand running through his hair, Naruto explained what happened. "As you can see, I was successful in removing Anko-chan's curse seal. However, during the removal I discovered something. Unlike the seal I removed from Anko, whose seal was still experimental, the others that were removed were complete, and the power of those seals were contained in a sort of bubble, and when the user would use the seal, that bubble would explode. Now the difference with Anko's seal is that it wasn't contained in this bubble and was moving through Anko-chan's chakra system, slowly destroying her coils. If I hadn't used the healing abilities of my light element, she would have died within 3 years." The others were shocked at this, and Naruto said with a serious face, "But what really pisses me off is that any medic should have been able to see this as well as any Hyuga with their Byakugan. So unless Anko hasn't been to the hospital in a few years, then they have deliberately withheld that information." Naruto had managed to lift himself from Anko's lap at the end and was unintentionally leaking killing intent. Anko felt it and quickly hugged him, making him relax in her embrace and let it go. I see. I'll start an investigation into this matter personally, the Hokage said. Deciding to lighten up the mood, he walked over to the now standing Anko and Naruto and hugged her. I am truly happy for you, Anko. You are finally living the life you deserve. Anko smiled and hugged her grandfather figure back. Anko was hugged by the other girls in the room, and after a few minutes of talking that each of them learned Mizuki was arrested yesterday. He had confessed to working for Orochimaru after being sent to Ibiki from what he did to Naruto during the test. Apparently a few other ninja had reported him acting strangely for a few months, and Sarutobi couldn't question him until he pulled that stunt on Naruto, which gave him an opening. Suddenly Naruto asked a question, so Kurenai-chan, who did you get for your team? Kurenai smiled and said, I got a tracker team consisting of Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino and Inuzuka Kiba. Naruto smiled at her. Sounds like the perfect group for you, Kur-chan. Have they passed your test yet? Kurenai blushed at her nickname and became confused at the test part. How do you know of that? She asked, looking at the Hokage for an answer. He just shrugged and said, he knows a lot of things that he shouldn't. She looked back at him and sighed at his innocent whistling. Well, yes, they did pass. I had them track me, and the first two to touch me would pass, while the third member would be sent back to the academy. Shino figured out the truth of the test quickly enough, and they had Kiba track me. Shino drained my chakra with his bugs, and Hinata immobilized me with her gentle fist style. Once they did that, Kiba and Shino touched me at the same time as did Akamaru by jumping on my head, passing the test. Of course they never actually had a chance, but that wasn't the point of the test. The others nodded at her answer. Naruto noticed it was close to 1 p.m. and said, you girls hungry? They each nodded their head, and he said, how about I take you all home with me and cook you some lunch? That way I can get to know each of you better. Anko was the first to answer, and when the others saw how quickly she responded, she explained, Naru-kun is an amazing cook. He made breakfast in bed for me this morning. I could definitely get used to waking up on your nod chest and being served breakfast each morning. She sighed with a dreamy look, and the other girls made a face that said, what? She laughed at their expression and said, I'll explain over lunch. They nodded at that. Alright, well, how about each of you grabs a part of me and I'll teleport us over there? Naruto said. Hana jumped into his arms, making him hold her bridal style. Anko and Kurenai each grabbed an arm. Sum and Makoto grinned at each other and grabbed an SS cheek each, making Naruto yelp and blush, while Tsubaki and Yugao placed their hands less than an inch from Naruto's crotch and were grinning at feeling something twitch in his pants. With a red-faced Naruto, he quickly said goodbye to the sputtering Hokage and teleported him and his 7 guests in front of the gate to his compound. When he led them in, each was amazed at how large and beautiful it was. It was easily the biggest compound in Konoha, beating the Hyuga and Uchiha easily. He led them to the main house and opened the door for them. They each gave him a kiss on the way in. He went to go get a yame while he made some clones to make lunch, and the girls were in the living room looking at Anko. Explain. They all said. After his clone dropped me off, I had just taken off my coat when he returned a few seconds later. He led me onto the couch and sat me down. Then he pulled out a scroll and unsealed 3 things. One of which I thought I'd never see again. They were a journal, a picture of my mother and I, and this, my mother's necklace. Anko said, pulling the necklace out from her neck. Kurenai gasped as she heard this. She and Anko were best friends, and she knew how sad Anko was after she lost her mother's necklace and couldn't remember where it was after Orochimaru erased her memories. Where did he find them? Kurenai asked. In one of Orochimaru's compounds in Sea Country. My memories have also started to return as I read more of my journal, and I've started to remember more since he healed my mind as well during the removal of the seal. Also, I don't know about you girls, but this man is too good to let go, even knowing how many women all have to share with him, and we've all seen his heart is big enough to love all of us equally. Anko said with a smile. They all smiled at that and nodded. Naruto and Ayame had returned a few minutes later and Ayame joined them in the living room. 30 minutes later Naruto alerted them lunch was ready. When they entered the dining room they couldn't stop the drool coming from their mouths. There in front of them on the long table that was easily capable of fitting 30 people was an assortment of food. There was steak, which Sum and Hana were drooling at, sweet bean soup and dango, which Anko and Kurenai were drooling at, salad, onigiri, which Makoto and Ayame were drooling at, and of course his masterpiece, ramen, which surprisingly Tsubaki was drooling at. Naruto and the girls had a great time during lunch. After they were done he led them around the house. Each was surprised at how many rooms there were and when he showed them the clan library. They were very eager to come back to try his personal onsen and spend a little personal time with Naruto in the private onsen. When they got back in the living room he told them the same thing he told Anko that morning. I know this is happening kind of fast for all of us as we only met yesterday, but I do care for all of you, and while I can't say I love you yet, if you're willing to give me a chance I know that this can work. With that he created a clone for each girl and he went to Yugao and they had a long makeout session. Everybody could hear moans coming from the others which only turned everybody on more. When they were done each clone had their respective women in their lap as he had Yugao. He held her around her waist and was kissing and nibbling her neck. The time came to leave and Naruto had collected a sample of their blood to allow them access into the compound. After escorting them to their homes Naruto did the dishes and noticing it was 10 p.m. went to bed, where he woke up in the seal and found Kyuubi taking a late shower. He got an idea and smirked. Warning Leon. Naruto removed his clothes letting his 8-inch dick free. He'd been horny all day after having Yugao on him. She would occasionally grind her SS into him, and as he found out from his clone's memories the other girls had the same idea. The idea of taking his vixen in the shower was making him even harder. They had somehow not done it in there yet. He quietly opened the shower door. He saw Kyuubi bent over washing her legs and he couldn't hold it any longer and slammed his COC right in her, making her scream, "Oh fuck." Kyuubi was washing herself after she had masturbated thinking of her and Naruto. She could feel him getting horny, and when his clone's memories came she came as well. She was so deep in thought that she didn't even sense Naruto come in, and as she was bent over washing her legs she felt something very familiar enter her tight cunt, making her yell, "Oh fuck." Naruto continued pounding into Kyuubi. She was still sensitive from her earlier orgasm, and after 15 minutes she'd come twice as he shot his hot cum into her womb. "Oh Kami, that was amazing Naru-kun," Kyuubi panted. She turned around and got on her knees taking his COC covered in her juices and started sussing him off. She bobbed up and down for a few minutes, then took out his COC only to place it between her large DD brius. She rubbed his COC with her tits as she sussed and licked the head. His hands were on her head and after 5 minutes he yelled out, "I'm coming." His cum shot over her face and tits. She used her fingers to lick up his cum, then licked his dick again. He was still hard and she got up and placed her back against the wall and signaled him to come over with her finger. He walked over and kissed her. Their tongues exploring each other's mouth, moaning. He lifted her left leg and teased her slit. She moaned and said, "Please Naru-kun. Stick that wonderful COC in me." He kissed her again and slammed into her. Oh, yes harder koi. Fuck my dirty pussy harder. Clean my dirty pussy with your cum. Kyuubi yelled. She wrapped her legs around his waist and he fucked her harder and faster. He used his hands to hold her SS, squeezing it, making her moan louder. He alternated between sussing and licking her brius. They kept this up for 20 minutes and she had come 3 times. She could feel his COC twitching in her and knew he was close. Naruto knew he was close too, so he used one of his hands to rub and pinch her clee, trying to get her close too. He watched her tits bounce as he kept slamming into her pussy and he felt it coming. "I'm coming Heim," he yelled. "Ah me too koi," Kyuubi yelled. "Q Heim," he yelled as he thrust as deep as he could, releasing his seed into her womb, filling it and then some. "Naru-kun," she yelled, coating his COC in her juices. Leon over. They panted with him still in her. They washed each other off and went to sleep with her back against his chest and his arms around her waist, keeping her close to him. Night koi, Naruto said, kissing the side of her neck. Night koishi, Kyuubi replied, grinding her hips into his. She chuckled as she felt something between her cheeks. And night to you too. Naruto chuckled and they went to sleep. It was now 2 days since he became a genin and Naruto woke up around 8 a.m. He knew his Aniki would be giving his team its test today and he was still infamously late, so that gave him till 1 p.m. at the latest, as that was when each Junin was to report whether their team passed or not. He went through his morning warm-ups and got dressed. He decided to head over to see Makoto. He left the compound and arrived on top of the Hokage monument. After looking across the village, he headed toward the Uchiha district. He walked into the district and approached the main house and knocked on the door. Makoto sighed as she sat in her living room. She had wished her son good luck on his test today, but he just replied in his usual, HN. She was also bored. Lately all she's been doing was training to keep her skills and body in shape. Ever since she became clan head, she hadn't been able to take any missions since she had to take care of Sasuke as well. Luckily they had enough money to live on. She was broken from her thoughts as she heard a knock at the door. Who could that be at this hour? She thought. She opened the door and was surprised to see Naruto there. Morning, Miko-chan, Naruto said. Miko-chan, Makoto thought and blushed. She smiled at him and said, Good morning, Naru-kun. What are you doing here? I came by as I had a feeling you could use the company. So I thought I'd kidnap you for the morning. Naruto said with a grin. Makoto rose an eyebrow and was about to retort until Naruto quieted her with capturing her lips with his own. He licked her lips, making them part, and he stuck his tongue in. No matter how many times we've done this, it always feels like the first time. She thought, dazed. He stopped and scooped her into his arms, bridal style, making her giggle. Ready to be my prisoner this morning, Miko-chan? He asked, wriggling his eyebrows. Makoto giggled and replied, Oh, I hope somebody rescues me from this terrible man. With that she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. They broke apart and he jumped to the roofs and sped out of Konoha. When they arrived at their destination, she saw a lake surrounded by sakura trees already in bloom. She was amazed at the beauty of it. He kissed her cheek and placed her down. Wanna go for a swim? He asked. But I don't have my bathing suit. She replied. Neither do I, but our underwear will work. He said and started taking off his clothes. Makoto blushed and started as well. When they were done, she was looking him over. He had a body that Kami must have personally created. He had a tanned body with well-muscled arms, a chiseled chest, a six-pack turning into an eight-pack, strong muscular legs, and she couldn't help but notice the bulge in his boxers. Naruto was looking her over as well and couldn't help but think, MILF. She had creamy skin and a well-toned body worthy of a kunoichi. She had CC cup breasts and a flat stomach. Her hips were wide that were connected to long legs in a luscious SS. She wore a black bra that barely contained her breasts and a G-string thong. You are absolutely beautiful, Miko-chan. Naruto said as he spun her around. Makoto blushed and giggled as he spun her around and she ended up in his arms. They kissed again and then he took her hand and led her to the lake. They spent all morning in the lake, tanning in the sun or laying together in the shade under a sakura tree. Naruto noticed the position of the sun and sighed. I wish we could spend more time together, but it's almost noon and I don't think Sasuke is ready to learn of us yet, so you should be at home before he gets back. Naruto said, tightening his arms around her waist. Makoto sighed as well and replied, Hi, you're probably right. I'll always love Sasuke as my son, but knowing what he is becoming and what he will become if he activates his Sharingan scares me. Naruto hugged her tighter and kissed her neck, comforting her. Unfortunately, Sasuke has already started walking down the path of evil. I will watch him, and if it is too late for him, I will destroy him. Naruto said. He saw a tear run down her cheek and he said, but if you become my mate, the curse on your family will be erased, since I have Kyuubi in me, and any children we have will not have any of the bloodline's side effects. However, there is a time limit on this. This only lasts till before my 16th birthday, as that is when Kyuubi will be released and will no longer be able to fix the bloodline. Makoto was shocked at this revelation. She smiled and blushed as she thought of them having children and asked, how exactly would she fix the bloodline? Naruto kissed her forehead and said, "It would be when I mark you and make you my mate. She'll channel some of her power into you to fix the bloodline while we both orgasm, and I bite your shoulder, marking you, making you mine." Makoto had a bit of blood running from her nose, and Naruto wiped it away, chuckling, and said, "Don't worry about that for now. We still have plenty of time until that happens. For now, let's just spend time together doing things like we did today." Makoto smiled and nodded. "Hi. I haven't had this much fun since before I was arranged to marry my late husband." They spent a couple of minutes together under the sakura tree before they got up and got dressed. She wrapped her arms around him and laid her head against his chest. He brought them back to the Uchiha compound, and after kissing her, bid her farewell for now. Naruto stopped by Ichiraku Ramen to see Ayame and for some lunch. "Ayame-chan, 3 bowls of miso please," Naruto said to his beautiful waitress of a girlfriend. Ayame smiled and said, "Oh, and how do you plan to pay for it?" I think this should be good enough." With that, he leaned over the counter and kissed her. She moaned, and when they parted she took a breath and said, "I expect all of your payments to be like that." He smiled and nodded his head and watched her as she took the order to her father. They talked for a few minutes before he noticed the time on the clock on the wall. He kissed her again and left some actual money with a little extra and headed for the Hokage Tower. He hid his presence as he snuck into the room. Only person who's not here would be Aniki. He still has 1 minute left. Kakashi appeared exactly at 1 and took his book out and nodded toward the Hokage. "Well, now that everyone is here, let's begin. We are here to see what teams have passed." The Hokage said and motioned for them to begin. Team 1 fails. Team 2 fails. Team 3 fails. Team 4 fails. Team 5 fails. Team 6 fails. Everyone looked at Kakashi as he put his book away and said, "Team 7 passes." They were all shocked at that, as Kakashi has never passed a team before. "Continue," Sarutobi said. Kurenai spoke next. "Team 8 passes. Since Team 9 is still in circulation, what about your team, Asuma?" The Hokage asked. "Team 10 passes," Asuma said. As I thought. Each of the clan heirs passed, as well as that Sai guy and the pink-haired one, Haruno Sakura, I believe." Naruto thought. "Kakashi, Kurenai, Asuma, please explain your tests and how they passed." Hiruzen said. They nodded and Kakashi began. Team 7 consists of Sai, Uchiha Sasuke, and Haruno Sakura. I gave them the bell test and they initially failed. I begun the test after making them wait 3 hours after I told them not to eat breakfast, and it seems the only one who didn't listen was Sai. I don't know who wrote up their files, but they are complete crap. They all hid in the forest once I begun the test. Sakura's stealth skills are horrible. Sasuke is around low genin and Sai is high genin. I went after Sakura first, and for someone who is supposed to be proficient in genjutsu, she fell for the lowest genjutsu possible, the Magen, Narakumi no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hell viewing technique. After knocking her out, I went after Sasuke, who chose to attack me alone, believing his teammates to be useless. He put up a decent fight, placing some traps around the field, and used AC ranked Kaden Jutsu, the Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release. Great fireball technique, but he seemed to barely have enough chakra for it as he was panting hard after using the technique. I finished him off with the Doden, Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, earth release, double suicide decapitation technique, and Sakura had just arrived only to scream and faint, seeing only Sasuke's head. Now Sai was a surprise. He is easily stronger than Sasuke. In fact, I believe a number of the new genin could actually beat Sasuke. Anyways, he figured out the truth of the test, and even after being blown off by both Sakura and Sasuke, he still helped them, as he helped wake Sakura up from the genjutsu and helped Sasuke without him knowing during his fight with me by placing traps. Once the time was up, I tied up Sakura to the post and told the others not to feed her. Once I left, Sai cut her down and offered her his food, and then Sasuke reluctantly agreed. I reappeared hoping to scare the crap out of them and pass them. He finished with a chuckle. The others were shocked at what they heard. Many believed the Uchiha would be the one to pass the team, and some of the more fanatic ones still believed he did. Kurenai spoke next. Team 8 consists of Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Well, for my test I had them track me, and the first 2 to touch me would pass, while the third member would be sent back to the academy. Shino figured out the truth of the test quickly enough, and they had Kiba track me. Shino drained my chakra with his bugs, and Hinata immobilized me with her gentle fist style. Once they did that, Kiba and Shino touched me at the same time as did Akamaru by jumping on my head, passing the test. Of course they never actually had a chance, but that wasn't the point of the test. They all looked at Asuma, who chuckled nervously. Team 10 consists of the second generation of the Ino Shika Cho trio with Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akamichi Choji. I just evaluated their skills. He chuckled and the others face faulted. One of the various Junin spoke up. Hokage-sama, I heard of a genin who got a perfect score on each test and even performed the 3 jutsu required without hand seals or saying the name. I also heard he was able to use the Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique, on Mizuki. What is to happen to him, as it seems he is not a part of the 3 teams that passed? The others nodded their head in agreement to the statement. The Hokage was about to reply when a voice replied, putting those that didn't recognize it in a defensive position. Actually, Hokage-sama and I have already come to an agreement to that matter. Everyone looked next to the window to see someone who looked like the Yondaime appear. Who are you and how long have you been here? One of the Junin questioned. Me. The name's Uzumaki Naruto, and I am the person who you just spoke about, and I've been here since before Kakashi arrived. Naruto said. One of the Junin began until he was interrupted by Naruto. I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you. The Sandame's law is still in effect. Besides, if any of you who hate me for housing the Kyuubi would have taken the time to actually learn about the seal, then you would have found out what it does. Their eyes widened as they realized he knew. What do you mean? One of them asked. The seal is designed to convert Kyuubi's chakra into my own, and once I reach my 16th birthday, the seal will finish and the demon known as Kyuubi no Yoko will be no more, Naruto said, then mentally added, and the human known as Kyuubi no Yoko will be born.